Hello friends, this is Mike from Wright, and this is the explanations video for SAT 2's Writing and Language section, passage number 3, question 23. Alright, we come across this question in the first sentence of the passage, so let's just read down to that. Alright, environmentalist otters. It has long been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America help keep kelp forests in their habitat healthy and vital. The first thing you want to do whenever you come across any question in the writing and language section is to ask yourself, what kind of question is it? You want to see this 23 up here, find 23 on the paper, question 23 on the paper, and look at the answer choices to see whether it's a grammar question or a writing strategy question. In other words, is this the kind of question where they're only asking us how should we phrase, how should we word this thought that we're trying to get across? Or, on the other hand, what thought should we put here given what we're trying to say generally in the passage? Now, this question is important because for grammar questions, you can answer them straight away. The only information you need is just the sentence itself, because all you're trying to decide is like where to put a comma or how to order these words, etc. In writing strategy questions, you often want to read the entire paragraph or sometimes even the entire passage before you have enough information to answer them, because the answers to these questions depend upon the content, the actual meanings of the stuff the author is trying to express. Now, looking at this particular question, and here again looking at the answer choices to this particular question, these answer choices mostly vary in terms of their punctuation and certain conjoining words, certain individual this they, this and this where they. For the most part, they're different ways of saying the same thing. So that should tell you that this is a grammar question, and again, the importance of that is that it means we can answer this question right now using just this sentence. We have enough to answer the question. Alright, so in answering this question, what we're going to do is reread this sentence with answer choice A's option in there, where, it's already in there. And we're asking ourselves the question, is this sentence grammatical? Does it make sense? Okay. It has long been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America help keep kelp forests in their habitat healthy and vital. All right, so the question is this grammatical? The answer to that question is yes. We're going to go through how this construction parses, why this sentence makes sense, and then we're going to go through the mistakes or the errors in each of B and C and D, and talk in detail about why those don't make sense, the specific places where they go wrong. All right, so starting with answer choice A's construction, it has long been known that. Now that part of the sentence just introduces something, and we're going to, what we're saying about that thing is we've known that thing for a long time. When you've gotten to this point in the sentence, when you've gotten to the point right here, we know that whatever is going to come should be a claim in itself, we'll call it an independent clause in itself. And whatever that thing is that we're going to say, that's a thing that has been known for a long time. All right, so what's been known? Well, it's been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America help keep kelp forests in their habitat healthy and vital. Now, we're going to talk about how this sentence parses, and in particular, we're going to talk about the role that this clause, the living along the west coast of North America clause, plays in the sentence, as well as the role that the second clause plays, this help keep kelp forests in their habitat healthy and vital clause. Now, we're going to talk about these clauses in terms of one of them being the main clause. That's the main thing we're saying about sea otters. What do we know about sea otters? And dependent clauses or subordinate clauses, where these are clauses that just help to refine our understanding of the main clause, maybe to narrow the scope of what we're talking about or to add a little bit of detail. In this sentence, the living along the west coast of North America clause is a mere subordinate clause. It's just helping us refine our understanding of which sea otters we're talking about. And the help is the main verb. The help clause is the main clause. The main thing that is happening to the sea otters, the main thing we're saying about the sea otters, the main thing we have known a long time about sea otters is that sea otters help kelp. I'm going to go through in even more detail. Here, this phrase is long been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America isn't itself saying anything about those sea otters. Instead, what this living along the west coast of North America clause does is refines our understanding of the subject of the sentence. It takes us from a sentence that talks about all sea otters being helpful. Here, a sentence that would say, it has long been known that sea otters help keep kelp forests and their habitat healthy and vital. It's long been known that all sea otters, or sea otters in general, are helpful. And it changes it from a claim about all sea otters to a claim just about some sea otters. We're not talking about all of them, we're just talking about the sea otters living along the west coast of North America, right? In this sentence construction, it isn't that all sea otters are helpful, it's just the west coast sea otters that are helpful, and maybe the east coast sea otters are a bunch of assholes, right? We're only saying that the sea otters living on the west coast help, right? We're not saying anything about the east coast sea otters. Now, once you've gotten to this point and you've said the sea otters living along the west coast of North America, you do then need to say something about what they do. The sentence doesn't yet have a main verb. You couldn't just end the sentence by saying, it has long been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America, period. You need to say something about those sea otters, that population of sea otters. What do they do? And that's where this help clause comes in. Those sea otters, those west coast sea otters, they help keep kelp forests and their habitat healthy and vital. All right, so in this construction, help is the main verb. It's the main thing they're doing. And this clause is just a subordinate or a dependent clause that modifies sea otters. It helps to refine our understanding of which sea otters we're talking about. It narrows the scope of the subject of the sentence. All right, there's how answer choice A makes sense. Let's go through each of B and C and D. And here I just want to note that this is a sentence boundaries question. This corresponds to a Khan Academy category called sentence boundaries and an SAT College Board category called sentence boundaries. And it's the category type where they test your ability to recognize and to correct incomplete sentences. So each of these answer choices is going to follow that pattern. You should be able to see similarities between the types of mistakes in each of these questions, and you should be able to use that to see the broader patterns in sentence boundaries questions. All right, so let's look at answer choice B. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to reread the sentence up here, replacing this underlined part with the entirety of B. And here it's really important, replace all and only the underlined part with the entirety of B. So let's see how that reads. It has long been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America, they help keep kelp forests and their habitat healthy and vital. All right, so answer choice B is very similar to answer choice A. The only difference between them is that they've got this comma right here after North America, whereas over here there's no comma. And there's this word they between the comma and help, between America and help. Now, the technical error this answer choice makes is that it unnecessarily repeats the subject of the sentence. Here it's that word they is unnecessarily repeating the subject, which is sea otters. And it does that before the sentence has arrived at a main verb. Now, to think about like a simpler example of this same error in action, think about the sentence, my parents, they are gonna kill me. Here, when you began that sentence with the words, my parents, you told your readers or your listeners that you were going to say something about my parents. You've introduced my parents as the subject of the sentence, and then you need to finish that sentence by saying something about them. So your listeners, after you've said those words, are expecting for you to attach some claim to your parents. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to kill you. Now, when you add that they in there, you're unnecessarily repeating the subject of the sentence. You're unnecessarily pointing us back to clarify, oh, I'm talking about my parents, when your listeners or your readers already know you're talking about your parents. You could just say, my parents are going to kill me. You don't have to say, my parents, they, my parents, the parents who I have, my parents, those parents, my parents, those, them, they are going to kill me. You don't need to say that. We already know you're talking about them. That's the same thing that's going on here. Right? It has long been known that the sea otters, which ones? The ones living along the west coast of North America. At this point, we've introduced the subject of the sentence, and all we've done is clarify the subject of the sentence. So we know that we're talking about, this is the equivalent of my parents. Here, the equivalent of my parents in this sentence is the sea otters living along the west coast of North America. And we're expecting to hear, what? What about them? You know, say something about those sea otters. What about those west coast sea otters? What do they do? So this they here unnecessarily clarifies that we're talking about the sea otters when we already know that we're talking about them. All right. There's the wrongness of B. Let's move to C. Again, I'm going to read this, substituting in C for the underlined part. It has long been known that the sea otters that live along the west coast of North America and help to keep kelp forests in their habitat healthy and vital. All right. This answer choice is wrong because it takes the word help and changes it from being the main verb, the main thing that we're saying about the sea otters. It's long been known that the sea otters help kelp, and turns it from the main clause into a mere subordinate clause, a dependent clause that's modifying the phrase sea otters in the exact same way as this clause is just a subordinate clause modifying the phrase sea otters. So using the exact same logic here, we're taking the big claim about sea otters. We're talking about sea otters in general, right at the beginning. It's long been known that sea otters in general. But we're not just talking about sea otters in general. We're introducing a dependent clause saying it's long been known that sea otters living on the west coast of America, and here in answer choice C it says the sea otters that live along the west coast of North America. And now instead of saying those sea otters help, we're saying we're not just talking about all west coast sea otters. We're only talking about the ones that live along the west coast of North America and also help to keep kelp forests and their habitat healthy and vital. So whereas in the previous construction where we're just talking about the sea otters living on the west coast and maybe there are some east coast sea otters that are assholes, right? Here we're narrowing the scope of our subject even further. We're saying we're not just talking about all sea otters, we're not just talking about west coast sea otters, we're talking about only west coast sea otters who help keep kelp forests healthy and vital. These are the ones we're talking about, the helpful west coast ones, right? On this construction, not only could there be a bunch of east coast asshole sea otters who don't help kelp, there could also be a whole bunch of west coast sea otters who don't help because there are a bunch of helpful ones and there are a bunch of not helpful ones that we're explicitly not talking about, right? Having refined the subject of our sentence so far, using the word help only to refine the subject of our sentence rather than as the main verb, answer choice C renders this sentence incomplete because it lacks a verb. We end the sentence without ever saying anything about the sea otters. The entire sentence reads as just a long refinement of we're getting really straight on which sea otters we're talking about. And we end the sentence without ever saying what's important about them or what they do. So I'm going to read the sentence again, and I want you to listen now because I'm going to try to read it in a way that will help your inner ear recognize that the sentence is incomplete. So I want you to listen for the incompleteness of the sentence. Here again, it has long been known that the sea otters that live along the west coast of North America and help to keep forests in their habitat healthy and vital. Here again, we need to say something about those sea otters. The west coast sea otters, who are helpful, do something. What do they do? Well, we don't know because the sentence is incomplete. All right, so answer choice C turns this help, the help clause, into a dependent clause when it needs to be the main clause. All right. Answer choice D functions in much the same way. The error that it makes is almost the same error. It takes that word help, changes it from the main clause into a mere subordinate clause or a dependent clause, and doing that takes the main verb of the sentence away, and so it makes it so we've ended the sentence without saying anything about sea otters. But let's read through it because it operates in a slightly different way, and we're going to go into detail on that. So again, just replacing it here. It has long been known that the sea otters that live along the west coast of North America, where they help keep kelp forests in their habitat healthy and vital. Okay. Now, whereas answer choice C took that helpness and changed it from the main thing into something that modified sea otters, here we are not just talking about west coast sea otters, but the ones who are helpful. Here this where is referring to the west coast of North America. Here, this where they takes the help, and instead of saying the helpfulness is something that modifies the sea otters, here this where they changes the help clause into a dependent clause that modifies the west coast. We're basically adding an additional bit of information about the west coast. So here again, just to read it and to try to give you this example, the sea otters, living along the west coast. Oh, the west coast, by the way, is where they help to keep kelp forests safe and healthy and vital. And then we need to move on and say, talk about what the sea otters do. All right, they live on the west coast. Fun fact about the west coast, it's where Tupac was born and raised. The sea otters who live on the west coast, where Tupac was born and raised, do stuff. And we end the sentence without saying, again, what they do. All right, so just to reread the sentence again in a way that hopefully will allow you to listen with your ear for the incompleteness of the sentence. The sentence runs like this. It has long been known that the sea otters that live along the west coast of North America, where they help to keep kelp forests and their habitat healthy and vital. Here, hopefully that silence should be damning for the answer choice. You should be ending that sentence listening for something that never comes, that end of the sentence, that what do they do? Here again to read answer choice A, and hopefully this one will sound right. It has long been known that the sea otters living along the west coast of North America help keep kelp forests and their habitat healthy and vital, period. All right, these three are incomplete sentences. A is a complete sentence. That's it for this question. I'll see you in the next one.